Hello, Stand Up Paddle community. I'm Kristen Thomas, and on behalf of SupConnect, I want to welcome you back, or maybe it's the first time you've joined us. This is SupConnect Live. It's every Tuesday and Thursday at 1 p.m. Pacific Time. That's 10 a.m. Hawaii, 4 p.m. on the East Coast. Glad to have you here. A couple points. In this series of interviews, we're really trying to reflect the variety of stand-up paddling, and excited today to be focusing, although we'll go a lot of different directions, on stand-up paddle yoga. We do have a follow-up group I want to mention on Facebook. It's called SupConnect Live Discussions, and because we're a little limited, we're going to have a great conversation today with Lauren Shimabukuro, but we will have follow-up and pictures and links to things that we talk about and people we talk about, so please find that also. And we hope and pray that everyone is staying safe and sane and getting out where you can, following rules. But during this interesting time, it's a good time to maybe put some content out there. And so part of why we're doing these interviews, and really looking forward to working with Lauren today. Without further ado, let's have her join us. There she is! Woo!
Hey!
You know, are you hiding? Going sideways. Cool. Great to have you on, Lauren. This is super fun.
Yeah,
And
thanks for having me.
we had a little pre-chat and I learned so much more about you. So we could talk for hours. We're going to limit it to maybe 30, 45 minutes. But looks like you have a lot of fan club. I see people names scrolling by, so that's fantastic. So stand-up paddleboarding was one of those things I admitted at the beginning that you actually were in it before I was and already doing it, but there were definitely some doubts, but it is a thing. It was not a flash in the pan.
Yeah.
And we're going to talk about how huge it is and how it's grown as part of this discussion. But I want to start kind of with you, kind of that origins story. Interesting with Sup Yoga, chicken and egg. Did Sup come first? Did yoga come first? Kind of how did you get started with either one you want to start with?
Sure. Kayaking came first.
Okay, that's water. That's
Yeah,
paddle.
yeah. Me and my dad were really into kayaking, and my mom is a huge fan of Laird Hamilton, and my brother is a huge fan of Eddie Vedder. And
Okay.
there was this show that was on in 2006 called Iconoclast. And so both my brother and my mom sent me kind of a VHS tape of
I
it.
remember those.
Yeah. Um, and so we watched it together, and they do stand-up paddling during the show. And I was like, I want to do that. And so finally, my dad surprised me, and he brought home a stand-up paddleboard. Little did we know it was actually a wooden longboard that was painted with a traction pad on it. Super heavy, really
And
hard to
more
balance.
power to you that you actually learned on a regular surfboard, on a longboard that you thought was a
Yeah.
stand. Well, you know, those can be
Yeah.
stand-up paddle boards, but many times they just don't have the width and the balance that a lot of us started
Yeah.
on. But I also love that you got it as a gift, that you didn't have
Yeah.
to beg and dig like a lot of people did to get started. Go, Dad.
Yeah. Yeah. So I owe it all to him.
That's wonderful that you have that in your
Yeah.
family. And I mean, your background, we can get more into it, but is amazing. And dance and physical education, you're an educator, multiple
Hmm.
degrees. You teach at both a high school, much closer to me
Hmm.
than I thought, just a
Yeah.
couple towns away, and live in North County, San Diego, and also teach at your local community college, which is really
Yeah.
cool too. But
Yeah.
where did yoga come in along the way?
Yeah. So I was born and raised in Arizona, and my goal was I wanted to learn how to surf, and I wanted to moved to California. And so before I moved, I made the goal that I wanted to paddle every waterway of my home state. So I got on Google Earth and I looked up every little waterway that showed up and racked my board and went there. And so sometimes I was paddling for like 22 miles on these big lakes. And I would get foot cramps and everything. I mean, I was still technically a beginner. And so I just pull into a canyon and just start doing yoga. And I had a friend who was going to Arizona State University, and he's a photographer. And he needed something refreshing, unique to take a picture of. And I said, I have a kind of an idea of what you could do. And so I was So he shot a picture of me doing stand-up paddle yoga, and there was this couple kayaking by, and they're like, "Oh, do you offer classes?" And I was like, "Oh, sure." So I started doing donation stand-up paddle yoga classes.
Oh, I
So
love that.
that's how it
So
started.
what years was this? You were in before 2010, like most people I've talked to
Yeah, I started
hadn't
in
gotten started.
2008.
Wow.
Yeah.
Impressive. Yeah. So it is interesting because it was something, well, much of what we're all doing is new. And so you really are, the OG of one of the sup yoga, but it kind of seemed to be happening sort of in a lot of places that people were maybe seeing that picture or getting that idea or making that transfer. So I definitely have met some people who were really into being yoga instructors first, and then other
Mhm.
people who are into the water in some way or stand up first and have a lot of. So it sounds like you had kind of both sides of that, being very involved in the whole world of movement. But the at that point in time, 2008 it wasn't too organized, was it?
No.
Invent
Yeah, it
it
was
as you go.
yeah, it was kind of a really small community. I'm sure there was more people out there, but we were just I would get on the internet. I'm like, who else is doing this? So I'd put in Google sup yoga and 10 people would pop up, and it inspired me to create a community called Namaste Sup. Yeah.
Which is huge. And I think that's how I first found you, maybe, or no, I take that back. As you said, you've been quite, have been quiet about it. So thank you. I appreciate for
Yeah.
you coming forward and being the face of it, because it's a lot of people and it's a community, and you've really kept it that way. So I think I
Yeah.
didn't know that I met you as Lauren Peterson in Arizona.
Yeah.
I don't think I knew you were attached to Namaste Sup, I really had to do some digging because I was very interested as the executive director of Stand Up Paddle Industry Association. We're trying to figure
Yeah.
this thing out, this Sup yoga, and who do we talk to? Because there's a lot of people doing it here, there, and everywhere. But ooh, here's this organized website that has a whole bunch of the different people who are teaching Stand Up Paddle
Yeah.
yoga. So was that in 2008 that you started searching and kind of came up with the name and the idea?
Yeah. Yeah. It kind of it happened really fast. It was like right after that photo shoot, it was like, bam, okay, I'm starting donation classes. And I started looking up and I was like, is anybody else doing this? And yeah, it was a really tight-knit, small community, and it's grown leaps and bounds. People are doing it all over the world now, and so it's really phenomenal and amazing.
Yeah, and I noticed that on Namaste Sup, there's people from all over. At first, did you mainly find people in the U.S., kind of North
Mhm.
America? Yeah,
Yeah, it was really popular in North America, Canada, Aruba, or
yeah,
be
that
the
kind of makes
popular
sense.
places. Yeah.
Yeah. Um, you're pretty humble about it, but it's a lot of work to put together and keep a website going like that and stay in
Yeah.
touch. And if you guys follow Namaste Sup, your story has at least, I don't know, 20 or 30 a day, posts that are showing people all over the world who are working with stand-up paddle yoga. So
Mhm.
do you have any help?
No, it's just me.
Oh, wow. Because besides being stand-up paddle yoga, you are a full-time instructor. You
I
teach at
am, yeah.
San Clemente High School,
Me
which
too.
interestingly is the alma mater of a whole bunch of people who are in stand-up paddle racing and different aspects of it. But I guess not surprising, being a Southern California coastal community. But that is definitely this area. I just live the other side of San Clemente North, and you live to the south. But this is definitely a stand-up paddle hub, no doubt.
Yeah,
Yeah.
definitely.
So I have found you now with a couple of different names. So you've branched out in your own practice.
Mhm.
Um, so how did the travel kind of thing come about?
Yeah, so my husband and I love to travel. Who doesn't? And inflatables have kind of become really popular and an easy way to travel. Originally, I mean, he travels with a whole lot of longboards and it's kind of crazy. And then I'm like, okay, I'm going to bring my board, and it just rolls up in a nice little duffel. And I was like, we're going to some amazing places, and I get to take my stand-up paddle yoga practice everywhere. I was like, why don't I start an account? So that's when I started stand-up paddle travel. No, sup yoga traveler. There we go.
Yeah.
It's fairly new.
And you mentioned the photography thing because it is a very stand-up paddling is photogenic to start with, but
Mhm.
yoga has definitely been highly photographed and does present beautiful photography and in beautiful places. And it's such an amazing extension, not only for people who get a stand-up paddleboard and want to try different aspects of it. And we would
Yeah.
encourage anybody and everybody to do it, even if you haven't done yoga. I think you would
Hmm.
love stand-up paddle yoga. But also, one thing in terms of growing the whole activity of stand-up paddleboarding, it brings people to the water who haven't been water people, where a lot of
Yeah.
us think of stand-up paddle people as coming from different water sports and different love of water,
Hmm.
and which is really a thing. We've talked about that in previous interviews. I mean, that love and addiction to water and wanting to be in, on, and around it is now like proven science, which is amazing. But I think that's really cool. Can you speak to that a little bit about yoga people, especially who want to, extend their practice and add a new challenge, because it is a challenge doing yoga on
Yeah.
water.
Yeah, and I'll add to that. I think somebody in the comments was asking what are some beginner poses to try on a stand-up paddleboard.
Yeah.
So, yeah, doing yoga on a board is very unique in the fact that when we have our practice on land, we don't really see our dominant side. We also don't see
Mm.
the visual benefits of our breath. So when you're on a board and the board's shaking, you use your breath to find stability, and it kind of and
Oh,
you
I
get
love
to see the
that.
benefits of it.
Yeah.
And then you also notice, like in downward facing dog, the board is going to lean to one side of your dominant side. So you kind of have to use muscles that you maybe have been lacking in to counterbalance and find that stability. So some easy postures to do would be any kind of seated prone postures first.
Hmm.
Tree pose is probably the hardest, along with the warrior poses are also a little bit more of a challenge. It's
Hmm.
interesting in the fact that poses that are on land might seem easy are actually the hardest. And the hardest postures, like a lot of people do headstands on their board, that comes easy because it comes from being in a prone or seated position and then coming up. So
Yeah.
it's interesting in that
That is
dynamic.
super interesting. Yeah. We'll try
Yeah.
to put in the follow-up maybe some pictures of some of those poses that you suggest people trying.
Yeah.
And I have to add that just being an outdoor person and missing it, Shavasana on the water, there is nothing
Yes.
like ending a yoga practice with your fingertips dangling in the water and a breeze blowing across your face.
Hmm.
That's something so different than most yoga practice, which is inside of a room, or at least had been from my experience.
Yeah, I mean, it's really amazing. One, to stand up paddle and see the world around, I mean, underneath you. That's a new experience. But
Hmm.
as well as doing stand up paddle yoga, you're seeing the same thing. Like you're seeing fish go underneath you, depending on like the visibility. And sometimes dolphins come in and say hello. So it's definitely, I mean, the yoga practice is already powerful enough. And then you add that nature component to it. And it's definitely, once you do it, you can't really stop. It's really hard to go
Yeah.
back and do
Yeah.
indoor yoga. You're like, wait, where's the pretty sky and the sounds
Yeah.
of the birds?
One travel adventure experience group that seemed to embrace sup yoga really early was the Wanderlust festivals, which I have never
Yes.
been to one, but they look amazing and they're in
Oh,
amazing
they're
places.
incredible.
So I know you've been a part of being an instructor at those. So what are some of the destinations that you've taught at
Yeah,
for
I
that?
have to thank Michelle Gerst and Sarah from Yoga Aqua.
Hmm.
I kind of was asking around. I'm like, how do you get a part of this? And they're like, oh, hey, we can we can
Hey.
network and hook you up with that. So yeah, for the last 4 years, during the summertime, I would go to one of the Wonderlists. So first it was Tahoe for 2 years, and then I did Wonderlust Whistler, which was amazing. And then last year was Vermont with Stratton. Yeah.
Oh,
So I would
neat.
have to
Yeah.
say,
Gorgeous
yeah.
locations, all.
Oh, all of them are phenomenal. I mean, they just really they choose these places that make you feel like this small with just these grand mountain tops and snow peak mountains and with the water. It was definitely a phenomenal experience. And students taking classes were all positive, and yeah, it was definitely one of those memorable moments for me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Let's see. Somebody's saying hello from Spain, up supping. I don't
Hi.
know if that's somebody you know. I was saying that one thing that's a little challenging on Instagram is that I don't know people's Instagram handles and they aren't usually their names. So it's very interesting
Yeah.
to try to look at the picture that's about this big and see if I can recognize who's in there. Yeah. So besides helping bring people together with Namaste Sup, which you guys all have to check out that website, because if you have any question or looking for someone in any location or want to connect with Sup Yoga in any way or learn more about it, great, great resource. Um, in
Thank you.
between all of this and moving, there was you got married and changed your name.
I did. Yeah.
Tell us about that experience and how that has played into your water life.
Yeah. Oh gosh.
He's a longboarder.
Yeah, yeah, he's a professional longboarder. He sells surfboards by Donald Takayama, Noah Shimabukuro. He stand-ups as well. Um, yeah, so we were dating for about 10 years before we got married. So it was a long time. Um, yeah,
So that dream in
we
Arizona that you had of being a surfer is true.
yeah, it is. I lucked out tremendously. Um, Sometimes, though, the professionals are not the best teachers, but once I got the basics down, then he became a really good teacher. I remember the first time going out, and I had stand-up paddleboarded and sup surfed and all of that, but I wanted to learn how to longboard. I didn't know how to pop up, but once I popped up, I was good. But it was,
Mhm.
catching the wave prone. And so I just remember him being like, okay, if you wipe out, cover your head so the fin doesn't hit you. And then he's like, oh, I see a wave. And he ditched me. And that was, I
I
was
have
like,
heard many stories like that. But
yeah, I was
how
like, well, I guess
interesting.
I gotta
Yeah, I guess,
learn.
yeah, my age, I'm sure it shows because I don't know very many people who stand up paddle surfed first and then had to go back and learn how to pop up. Um, a lot of us, it was the other way around, and that you definitely see the people who don't stand up paddle as a recreational activity and just went from surfing to sup surfing. And there's just you talk about the stability in those, what are those little
Mhm.
proprioceptor muscles that they talk a
Yep.
lot about in the balance. And this, what makes one of the beautiful things about stand up is that it's really firing everything in your body. I love,
Yes.
and what you said about breath, I'd never really thought about that. I race stand up paddle boards and I think about
Yeah.
yoga breathing and try to breathe that way because it's a strength limiting, not a cardio limiting. At least for me, I have a long
Hmm.
cadence. And so I try to really regulate my breathing to keep me going on a 6 mile, 10 mile race. So yoga breathing has been huge help to my racing world. And that's really interesting about the balance. I had never thought about, because as a surfer and a stand up paddler, having your dominant side. We talk about that all the time in
Yeah.
racing and where your feet are and that kind of thing. But I'd never thought that of course, that affects your yoga too, and had really never
Yeah.
given that one a thought. Very interesting. How about you
Mhm.
mentioned some starter poses? Let's back up a little bit to the
Yeah.
beginners. What are
Hmm.
some things that, stand-up paddleboard's pretty versatile. Those
Hmm.
big, giant, heavy ones that we all started on, layered
Yeah.
boards in a lot of cases. Yours was a little narrower since it used to be a
Yeah.
surfboard, but in fact, I heard a lot of people started on tandem surfboards that were
Oh,
meant to
yeah.
be
Yeah.
tandem, and those had a little more stability. But what about, are there certain things on a board that somebody might look for that really wants that to be their thing? Sup yoga.
Yeah. I would say volume, thickness, um, the width are kind of important to offer stability. If you're first learning, I highly suggest an inflatable just because when you have those moments, which is going to happen where you face plant or things don't go your knees, you're trying something and you come down to
Hmm.
your knees. I find that the inflatable is a lot more forgiving. It's kind of like coming down on an inflatable mattress as opposed to coming down on epoxy or something that's not going to be as forgiving. Plus, it's easy to store. Usually, they're more stable that way, and they're cheaper. So, if you're a beginner, I highly suggest looking into inflatables first. And
Yeah.
also depending on your conditions. So you kind of got to know where you're going to go paddling. Is it super windy? Then an inflatable might not be the best choice. Or maybe you're going to try it in your pool first where an inflatable would work. So, yeah.
Really excellent advice. And it is interesting to be recommending inflatables. What a difference from 10 years
Yeah,
ago when people went,
exactly.
what? What's it? Wait, a hardboard, especially from where we're from. If you're from surf culture, really the US was late to the game on inflatables. Really, we couldn't get our head wrapped around the
No.
idea of a blow up thing being as good as a hardboard, but
Yeah. Oh, they've
absolutely is.
gotten
And
really good. It's
yeah, and
insane.
like you, I have had the opportunity to throw it in as luggage on flights and take it places. That's just so amazing. A three-piece
Oh,
paddle
yeah.
and a stand-up paddleboard, and you can throw some other things in there. They don't look twice at it. It's under
Yeah.
50 pounds. It's the right
No board
size.
fee. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. There's great benefit to that for sure. Um, so good advice on getting started. You have people from all over the world, and you mentioned like Michelle and Sarah that both are in the Los Angeles area. But who are some of the other early people into stand up and their companies in stand up paddle yoga that you met maybe in that '08 through 2010 time period?
Yeah. Rachel, who's in Aruba. She does island yoga now. Very
Hmm.
popular in the beginning. Um, a couple different names there. Uh, Julie Roach is in Florida. Let's see. Lay is in San Francisco. Stand up
Hmm.
paddle on board.
On board, yeah.
Uh-huh. Yep. Yeah, so there's a lot of different incredible stand-up paddle yogis. I saw earlier in the comments somebody was asking about an anchor system. So,
Mm.
real quickly on that.
Yeah.
uh, so, kayak anchors work really good. I like to travel with sand anchors, which is basically like this um, basically this bag you fill up with sand and it works perfect. I can just put it in with my duffel and travel with it. If you're doing stand-up paddle yoga, it's kind of, unless you're going down a river and you're going to just be going with the current and doing yoga, a very lazy river with no rapids,
Yeah.
then you don't necessarily need an anchor. But if you're going to be doing stand-up paddle yoga on a lake, in a lagoon, the ocean, an anchor is definitely the way to go. And
Yeah.
I find the sand anchors really easy. Plus, it's you can
Well,
connect
lighter to
it on the
travel with
beach in the
since, yeah.
marina. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
What
yeah,
about, I would
totally.
think depth, again, I have never tried to teach a stand-up paddle yoga class and with anchors, but depth I would think is a big issue. You probably have to have a real
Yeah.
versatile line and be able to tie it up if you're in shallows, or you probably
Oh,
surprise yourself sometimes like, oh, it's deep right here.
yeah. The first big class I taught, I mean, I'm from Arizona, so I don't really have to think about tides really. And I remember I taught it in Newport, and it was we were anchored as a class really close to the beach, and I didn't know that it was going to be low tide. And by the end, their shavasana was on the beach, and all the anchors and everything were out. So it's definitely something that you have to be looking at before you teach a class or before you go out for your personal practice. Is what is the tide doing? Is my anchor even going to hold because it's going to be high tide or
Yeah.
things of that
Tides and
nature?
currents and
Yes,
absolutely. Yeah.
exactly.
Well, before this interview opportunity came along, actually just a couple months ago, my friend Maggie of Blue Paddle Sup said, "Hey, there's this little
Yes.
yoga
Yeah.
challenge, and it's for everybody." So she got. We were trying to win another friend, Kathy's daughter, Erin,
Mhm.
the board that was a prize, but it was really fun. And maybe explain a little bit what you offered because you said that's an annual thing, I think.
Yeah. So Namaste Sup puts an annual challenge on in August. And it's a month of poses for each day, and you just follow along. You post a picture. You don't have to do it on a stand-up paddleboard. You can do it on land. You don't even need a yoga mat. You can just pull out a beach towel anywhere and participate as best you can. You can modify postures. And by the end, we usually have a lot of sponsors that donate. And usually part of that is a stand up paddleboard. So Boga's been really generous along with Glide Sup. Laird Sup 1 year donated as well. So we've had a lot of donations and people winning stand up paddleboards in
Yeah.
August. Yeah.
And it was really fun, and it was interesting to try to do it. Sometimes you were very flexible. So sometimes it was land and sometimes it was on water. Of course, now we have a whole different issues with access.
Yeah.
But I love the adaptability. I think I mentioned to you, yoga was something that I came to much later as a former athlete, but kind of a not a flexible person. I always thought it was for people who are flexible, but finally it clicked. I was talking to Jeremy Vane once about how much
Yes.
you need it
Oh,
because
there's
you're not
another awesome
flexible.
yogi.
Yes, absolutely. And many, many other things like you involved. Yeah, he's been very involved in the SUP community in so many ways. So I love that there was adaptability because, the inversions and stuff aren't something I spent a lot of time on. So maybe if when the
Yeah.
water warms up and we're back to the water, I'll uh, be a bigger risk taker and do some headstands, attempt headstands at least. Yeah. But we talked also a little bit about, and this is I don't mean it as a negative in any way, but I was surprised as this has grown to find that so many SUP yoga instructors are not just instructing students, but they are certifying and they're instructing other instructors. But you had a really good explanation that that's definitely part of yoga culture, you said, I think.
Hmm. Yeah. So, if you go to a yoga studio, normally they're offering retreats, they're offering workshops and teacher trainings. So it's no surprise that when you combine stand-up paddle yoga, that people are going to offer stand-up paddle yoga retreats, stand-up paddle yoga teacher trainings as part of their class or business plan.
Yeah. Just because we were in trying, again, from the industry association, trying to get a handle on SUP instruction, we feel like we kind of have a handle on it. There aren't that many groups that are
Mhm.
instructing regular, just get started and be in fact, I would say there probably aren't enough. Some people would argue that, but people can't find a class sometimes and need a
Mhm.
class. But SUP yoga, it seems like there's so many more. And you threw out a big number, which is wonderful because it's a big world and there's a lot of bodies of water and we need SUP yoga people everywhere. What did you say you thought the count was on about how many stand-up paddle yoga people there are out there instructing?
Yeah. First off, hi, Christy.
Christy!
Hey. Um, Yeah, so again, it started off as 10. And again, I'm sure there was way more than that, but that was what you could find via Google at that time. But yeah, so it's grown. We have about 14,000 followers with Namaste Sub, about 400 businesses highlighting. We have to update our website. It's a little out of date, but it's a work in progress with me.
Well, since you work full time and you're married and
Yeah,
you do it for free, yeah, I think you have a good excuse.
yeah, yeah.
Amazing. So 400 businesses just on Namaste Sep. Cool. Do you know how many of them offer opportunities to learn how to be a yoga instructor? Good chunk of
It
them.
varies. Yeah, I
Yeah.
would say a big chunk of them. Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
So lots of good opportunities out there.
Hmm.
One thing that you have advocated for that I haven't heard much about, being a teacher in a public high
Hmm.
school, you've gone and spoken about stand-up paddle yoga to a number of groups and trying to get it into public education. Want to
Hmm.
speak to that a little bit?
Yeah. So early on, in I would say about 2010, I was going back and forth between Arizona and California doing stand-up paddle yoga workshops and certifications and trainings and all of that. And I would come back to my students, and my students would be like, "What did you do this weekend, Mrs. Peterson?" At that time. Um, and I was like, "Well, this weekend I saw whales," and they were like, "What? We want to see whales." And I wanted to bring that experience of doing stand-up paddle yoga because we had a yoga unit in our physical education, but I wanted to bring that experience of a lot of the students skateboarded or wakeboard in Arizona, and I wanted to bring that experience of stand-up paddle yoga. And so I put some big universal surf tech boards on top of two Bozus and created a curriculum, and it went viral, and I got the opportunity to speak at a lot of physical education conferences. I've been including land stand-up paddle yoga, just because it's more feasible for schools, it's less liability,
Mm-hmm.
and it inspires the students. And if they want to do stand-up paddle yoga, I'm like, look at Namaste Sup, go see the classes near you. And a lot of them have come back and they're like, hey, I took a class in Dana Point Harbor. with this one stand-up paddle yoga group, and they had a blast. And so it's really inspiring the students that I'm teaching at the high school and both the college to kind of get out there and try stand-up paddle yoga.
That's fantastic. And I mean, what an innovator, the stuff you've done, like creating a way to do it on land.
Mhm.
I know you work with Indoboard, which is a neat balance,
Yeah.
a company that stand up paddle. We have a lot of people I know use them and practice balance. I know it's for surfing or many different
Mhm.
things. But did you say you worked with them to adapt something for yoga?
Yeah, so they saw that picture and they're like, "Hey," they pulled me aside and they're like, "We have this amazing product that we're putting into production. We want you to have a look at it." And so they came out with the Indo Yoga board, and that's what I use now. It's definitely easier to store than having big, gigantic boards and Bosu. And the students kind of get that same feeling with the rocker that's underneath the board. It kind of looks like a snowboard with some rocker underneath. So,
Cool.
yeah.
Yeah. Well, I have part of that. I have the Indo with the cushion. I prefer the cushion. I
Yeah.
don't want to I've broken my elbow before doing one of those
Oh
kind of
no.
falls. So unless I have a wall near me, I still stay away from the total surfy one, rolly one. But that's really cool that you have helped innovate in so many different ways. Fantastic. Hey, I asked with your last name, and you already
Yeah.
told me you are not related to the famous ukulele player.
No.
But was your husband the stand-up paddle surfer that was in those very early contests? I think it was,
Yeah.
yeah, he was
Yeah.
2008. He was in
Yeah.
Duke's final. Oh
Yep.
my
He
gosh.
did the US Open
Wow.
and won that and won Porto and yeah. Yeah.
So you're like sup royalty, the two of you together. I just learned something. I didn't know that. That's fantastic. I saw the name and I'm like, that sounds familiar too.
Yeah.
And
Yeah,
maybe yeah,
he's awesome at it.
cool. Wow. So he learned about stand up probably even before you did?
Yeah, he
If he was
did.
in, yeah, yeah,
Yeah, he
over
grew
there
up
in
in
Hawaii.
Maui. Yeah. Yeah.
Definitely a hub over there, huh? In
Yeah.
Honolulu and in yeah, Oahu and Maui. I think we're really, really into it. Absolutely.
Mhm.
So back to certification for a minute.
Mhm.
Because you've had so many conversations and you work with 400 businesses, is there sort of a standard that's accepted? I know there's nothing official out there and no like rules about it, but it's very interesting that there's knowledge of yoga obviously needed. And I know yoga
Mhm.
itself, Yoga Alliance has 200 hours and 500 hours and that kind of thing. And then safety and the stand up paddling and anything related to water, that side of it's really important too. So have you guys kind of mutually agreed, would you say, on sort of a basis that you ask people to have to be a yoga instructor, to be officially certified?
Yeah, it's something that's definitely taking stand-up paddle yoga teachers and they're taking notice, and it's something that's evolving to have this standard that has to be met. Um, uh, so as of right now, there isn't something where everybody has to have it, but it's definitely this underlying tone of you definitely need to teach at least a unit of water safety,
Mm-hmm.
whether that's within the ramifications of WPA or I know that Sup Yoga Tulum is coming out with a Sup Yoga Alliance that's on Instagram that's kind of doing more standardized process. Also, Namaste Sup has guidelines or standards if you want us to post like your teacher training and Instagram that you have
Mm-hmm.
to have a water safety course
Yeah.
for your
And then
students.
usually 200 hours, or do some people, I mean, you know, I don't know. I'm not a yoga instructor. Is that
Mm-hmm.
necessary? Or maybe somebody who's practiced yoga their whole life. And there's another question Christy's throwing out there. Very interesting. What are your thoughts on online training for SUP yoga?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I see the pros and cons to online training. It's kind of what I'm dealing with right now with education. There
Yeah,
are,
no kidding, huh?
yeah,
In this, yeah, COVID-19 online education.
yeah, is that there are lessons that are great for online training. And there are lessons that I think still, it kind of needs to be a hybrid. I know that a lot of online training requires students to submit videos. of them doing their water safety techniques, whether it's in a pool or in a lake. So again, there's pros to cons to that. It's almost like you need to be backed up or go through a course with lifeguard safety, or those would be the things that I think that we kind of need to progress and look at for online training, is having that partner of water safety to kind of look over and see, are you doing the proper techniques before moving forward. So
Yeah.
I see the pros and cons to both.
Yeah. And you, like myself, are used to being Switzerland, because definitely when I was the director of the industry association, you do need to. I honor anybody who's trying to do anything right now. And I think we talked about, this is kind of the bigger picture, not necessarily just sup yoga, but if somebody's getting some kind of training, isn't it better than not, if it's good, than nothing at all? And
Exactly.
so perhaps they're in a place, perhaps, like you said, there's certain pieces of it. But we would hope that somebody, before they taught a stand-up paddle yoga class, had been out stand-up paddleboarding, had actually
Yes.
done, yoga, had maybe done some just teaching. Yeah, pluses and minuses, like you said, but the whole hybrid thing definitely, it's going to have its place. I mean, we could have a whole nother discussion of education
Yeah.
right now, because they're learning that some of these things could work in this way, perhaps.
Yep.
I'm very happy today to have no technical difficulties, because I have in this
Yay.
whole Instagram format. So there's that
Yes.
side of it for those of us who are
Exactly.
of another generation, that frustration. But yeah, I think it's so great what you're doing and bringing people together. And I applaud all of you in Sup Yoga that you are talking about it and you are doing something, because I'm not sure in some of the other pieces of stand-up paddling, sometimes people get kind of a little possessive of theirs and don't want to share. And that's not a way to bring us all up. So good to see that. I don't know if you could see, is that a question or somebody's agreeing? Then final test. Yeah,
Yep.
yeah. Final test, a check to safety, they're agreeing with. Christy, we're glad you're on here too. I wish we could talk to
Yes.
people too.
Thank you,
That's one
Chris.
thing about this format, but
Yeah.
we will definitely follow up. So, interesting time right now, but you and I
Yes.
have made a date, and we are going to go stand-up paddle surfing at
Yes.
Sano when it's open again. So if anybody
Yay.
wants,
I look
like,
forward to it.
let's
Yeah.
have a party. Yeah, I miss probably sup surfing the most, because I am finding legal, safe places up here actually to get out and paddle, but
Oh,
not on the ocean.
nice.
No ocean access. But yeah, San Diego is one of the counties
Yeah.
that's really shut down.
Yes,
My
it is.
understanding is, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, and respect and understand all of that. So
Yes.
it is a really, so in terms of the businesses, it's a tough time. If it's your livelihood and you have a service business or a retail business or a combination, which probably a lot of the people in Sup Yoga do, it's tough right now. So do you have any ideas of how we can support the Sup Yoga teachers? Are any of them selling, for instance, gift cards or coupons to use when things start up to try to help them get through things? I know with restaurants, we're trying to, buy the to-go or buy the gift card to use later. Is there anything like that to your knowledge, or any of your?
Yeah, there's a lot of teachers who are offering Zoom classes with donations to Venmo, like after their class, or in their caption, they'll put that. Just um, There's also gift cards as well, donating, finding your local stand-up paddle yoga business and supporting them. Some of them sell t-shirts or hats, or just anything helps during this time.
Mm-hmm.
Namaste Sup is highlighting Sup yoga teachers right now,
Cool.
July to or actually April to July, until we start our Namaste Sup August challenge. So check out all the phenomenal stand-up paddle yoga teachers.
Absolutely. Yeah. Great to do that. Also wanted to mention, I don't know if we would call it a spin-off, but it's been interesting, the progression, and that some sup boards have become rectangular. I don't know if they're any
Yes.
longer sup boards. And it is, the whole sup fitness didn't necessarily come from sup yoga, but fitness and yoga you're able to do on pools or
Yes.
on in other places. And rectangular inflatables, they seem to be mats, and they have different names depending on the brand, but seem like a great extension of being on the
Yeah.
water and that balance
Yeah.
challenge. You're
Yeah.
seeing a lot of that?
I am. I had the wonderful opportunity from Boga to borrow their Boga Fit mat for my the high school dance team, and so had the opportunity to borrow the pool and do some stand-up paddle yoga, and the students absolutely loved it. We did because we only had a certain number of boards. We did a partner yoga class, and they just absolutely loved the opportunity to do something different for conditioning. And so having a rectangular board that you can fit between the lane lines, that opens it up to doing stand-up paddle yoga year round, which is amazing. So instead of doing it just in the summertime, depending on if you have to deal with snow or anything, this really opens it up. Also for gyms, YMCAs, boys and girls clubs, it's really technology that's really useful for stand-up paddle yoga businesses.
Yeah, and we're in Southern California, so we have weather to do it year round. But the indoor pools, a
Yeah.
lot of people in Canada and stuff, they're able to use this stand-up paddling. Oh,
Hmm.
Andre in Russia has just checked in. I wonder what time it is in
Hey,
Russia. Oh, and Christy's going to come surf with us. Yay!
yay!
Come down from Canada and surf with us
Yes,
when we can
please.
all travel again. Andre had the great opportunity of meeting in China. He's an Olympian who's crossing over into stand-up paddling.
Oh, awesome.
Great stuff. Yeah.
Yeah.
So thank you so much, Lauren. Anything
Hey,
else you want to add
Maricosta.
about? Oh, and where is
Yeah,
Maricosta? Oh,
Maricosta.
that's yeah,
Yeah.
that's your college.
Yeah. Hey.
That's where you teach. Yay, Lauren. Oh, and Christy wants us to come up to Canada. That sounds good. I
Okay.
heard Tofino
Yes.
is
Oh, I've
supposed to be
never been to
I
Tofino.
haven't either. It's supposed to
I
be
hear
a
great things.
beautiful, amazing place to surf.
It's on the
Yep,
list.
with a wetsuit.
Yep. Yep.
So is getting back to Hawaii. So it has
Yes.
been fantastic to talk with you. I wish
Thank you
you
so
all the
much for
best.
having me.
Yeah. Namaste.
Namaste. Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, and this will follow up. Remember that Facebook has SupConnect live discussions where we'll post some pictures and some links to people and things that we talked about, and you can ask Lauren more questions. If you have any, just really appreciate you sharing your world and life and story and that of stand-up paddle yoga.
Thank you
Take
for this
care.
platform. Thank you.
It's wonderful. Thank you. Thank you. Bye now.
Bye.